Hey everyone, and welcome back. So new polling data shows that a $2,000 stimulus check would have the backing of both sides of the political aisle. Both Democrats and Republicans would support such a thing. But is this going to be enough to get both Democrats and Republicans in Congress to pass a bill onto Trump's desk within the next few months, including those $2,000 stimmy checks that Trump is promising? In today's video, we are going to be covering everything that you need to know. But before we go ahead and dive into for today, if you would like to receive up to $200 in free stock or $200 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Robinhood. All you have to do is once you click on that link is just sign up for a free account and then simply link your bank account. You do not even have to make an opening deposit. At that point in time, Robinhood will be sending you one free stock worth all the way up to $200. And if you'd rather just have the cash, all you have to do is once you receive the free stock is just sell it for what it's worth and then transfer the cash value right back to your bank account. Okay, so diving right into for today. So in today's video, of course, we have an update on those $2,000 stimulus checks that President Donald Trump has been promising. This is a huge political risk. Obviously, if he's able to fulfill this promise, this could really help Trump and Republicans come the midterm elections. And obviously, a lot of Americans are really wanting this as well. We have polling from both sides of the aisle saying they would support these checks. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this update here from MSNBC. They say that Trump's promise of direct checks to Americans put GOP into a bind. So President Donald Trump is stuck on an idea. Sending checks to Americans, a $2,000 quote dividend check using revenue from his global tariff campaign, a Doge savings payment using 20% of the proceeds from Elon Musk's budget cutting initiative, a healthcare plan that would funnel money away from Affordable Care Act insurance plans and direct it straight to Americans who might be able to keep any money left over. Now, that was actually one of the ideas earlier on this year, was to use the savings that Elon Musk and Doge were able to find and cut from the US, from whatever the US government was currently spending, and they would take 20% of those savings and they would send out a stimulus check to US households. They were estimating that these checks would be right around $5,000 in total. Well, unfortunately, that idea sort of fizzled out and never actually ended up happening. But now, once again, in November, as we close out this year, we have $2,000 stimmy checks, this time being promised by the President of the United States. Is this going to be enough to get Trump and Republicans back in good standing with the American people and actually have a good chance of winning come the midterm elections next year in November? Now they go in here to say that the White House has yet to release concrete plans on any of it. The press secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters on Wednesday that the administration is currently exploring all legal options to issue the $2,000 tariff checks, and that puts Trump's Republicans in a dicey spot. If direct checks are not issued, there's a political threat if voters get their hopes up waiting for money that they don't receive. It's a quote, if you make a promise that sounds good to people and then it sort of just disappears, maybe they not notice that the first or the second time, but certainly if you keep doing that, they do, said Doug Hay, a Republican strategist. So that is a very good point. If we have Trump coming out multiple times promising checks to Americans as much as $2,000, that's putting Republicans, that's putting independents, and that's putting Democrats their hopes up a lot, especially those that could really use this money. And if you're not able to fulfill that promise and it sort of just fizzles out and they feel that you're not really caring, you're just making false promises, that's going to put Trump and Republicans in a very bad spot come the November midterm elections. Now they go in here to say, but there's potentially an even bigger risk. If checks are issued, they would likely either drive up inflation or, if not, serve as an implicit acknowledgement that the fundamentals of the economy are weaker than White House suggested. In a strong economy with low unemployment and healthy consumer spending, adding more money to people's pockets can add inflationary pressure, which could worsen Americans' concerns about affordability and the cost of living. Stimulus payments are most effective in a recession or economic downturn with low inflation, high unemployment, and weak consumer demand. And right now, the labor market is showing signs of softening, but consumer spending has remained strong and inflation has cooled enough that the Federal Reserve has started to reduce interest rates. Now, of course, they have not yet got the inflation down to 2%. That was what they were wanting to get it down to. Instead, it has gone the opposite direction. So instead of inflation going down, we now have inflation once again at 3% and possibly going up even more because of these tariffs. And if they did send out a check, a stimulus check of $2,000, could that possibly make inflation go up once again, maybe as high as it was back in 2021, 2022, where it reached as high as 8 to 9%? Well, I asked ChatGPT whether or not these stimulus checks back in 2020 and 21 increased inflation, and if so, by how much. They said, yes, there is credible evidence that these stimulus checks and related fiscal transfers during the 2020 21 years did contribute to higher inflation in the US, though they were not the sole cause, and exact magnitude estimates vary. Here's a breakdown. So the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco analyzed U.S. fiscal support, including direct payments, expanded unemployment benefits, etc. Their estimate was that such fiscal support may have raised core inflation about 3 percentage points by the end of 2021. And another study by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis found that U.S. fiscal stimulus during the pandemic contributed about 2.6 percentage points to inflation in the relevant period. So if Americans receive a stimmy check of $2,000, for example, but at the same time, if we have inflation rise by 2 to 3 percentage points from where it is now at 3% up to 5 or 6%, it really isn't going to make a whole lot of sense, because sure, we're going to be receiving $2,000, but at the same time, we're going to be paying 2 or 3% more for goods and services over the next year. If that happens to be the case, then we're pretty much going to be spending that $2,000 spread out over the course of the year anyways. It's, we're going to end up spending the $2,000 even though we're receiving. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But they go on here to say that instead, the recent pitches from the president nod a Republicans' political reality. Exit polls from last week's elections show that the cost of living remains a top priority for workers. It's a quote, "To me, this just looks like it is an election ploy," said Desmond Lackman, an economist at the conservative-leaning American Enterprise Institute. He's just seen that people are worried about affordability and they're not making ends meet. So why don't you just give them a check? The president plans to travel the country later this year and into 2026 to deliver speeches focused on the economy, according to a senior White House official, though the locations have yet to be decided. And despite the president publicly dismissing concerns about affordability, White House staffers have organized meetings to address the issue. And that is one of the big problems. A lot of people elected Trump because of affordability issues. They believe that Biden was not doing a great job with the economy. They wanted a change, so they elected Trump, and so far they have really not seen things getting all that much better. And if Trump continues this trend where affordability continues to be an issue, the economy doesn't really see much improvement, that's going to put Republicans' chances of not only winning the midterms at a very low rate, but also coming up the next presidential election in 2028. That's also going to lower their chances of winning that as well. So for Republicans, for Trump, it's going to be very huge to turn things around, even if it's just the perception. And this perception could be $2,000 stimulus checks that could help their chances coming up in the midterm elections. Because if we look at polling here from Forbes, it showed that the Doge dividend check at least had strong support and could actually lure dim voters to the GOP. Now, these were the Doge dividend checks of $5,000, not the current ones being discussed, but you'd have to think it would have to have pretty similar results. So a poll found that 7 in 10 Americans supported a Doge dividend check. Now, the survey conducted by JL Partners on February 24th through 25th among 1,001 registered voters found that there was an overwhelming cross-party support, with 67% of Americans backing the proposal and 46% strongly supporting it. Notably, 1 in 4 Democrats and almost half of independents say that receiving the dividend will make them more likely to vote for a Republican congressional candidate, the poll found. And that while 83% of Republicans surveyed favored the plan, 58% of Democrats who responded also approve. Participants identifying as independents largely align with this sentiment at 61%, demonstrating broad appeal across the political spectrum. Support within the poll also cut across all income categories to and across white and blue collar workers. And when asked how receiving a Doge dividend check would make them feel, the most common responses given were, quote, happy, relieved, and excited. The idea that the federal government could fund direct payments by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse appears to resonate with the public. And a majority of 56% also said that receiving the check would increase their trust in the government. So again, if you look at this polling data, we have Republicans backing it, we have independents backing it, and most important of all, for the Trump administration and Republicans. We also have Democratic voters also backing these stimmy checks. Now, whether or not we'll actually have Democrat lawmakers in DC voting in favor of these checks, that is a complete other issue, because I'm not sure whether or not Democrats will want a check going out right before the midterm election with Trump's name on it of $2,000, because then we could have independents voting for Republican congressional candidates. We could have even lifelong Democrats voting for Republican congressional candidates. That is something they do not want to see, especially if we look at the polling data here, where Democrats have a huge advantage over Republicans in the 2026 midterm elections. On average, they are leading by 4.4 points, according to Real Clear Politics. So things are looking very good for Democrats right now. And if they do allow Trump to sign into law a $2,000 stimmy check, that could actually hurt their chances come the midterm election and winning back the House of Representatives. But with that said, leave your thoughts and comments below. What do you personally think about a $2,000 stimulus check? Would you be for this? Would you be against it? Leave your thoughts and comments below. But that's all we have for today's video, and I will see you in the next one.